If today would still be a good day to have any outdoor plans, if you could still drive or travel, yes, we're not expecting any impactful weather towards the majority of today. Any onset of wintry precipitation would begin later tonight and into tomorrow morning. Most of the winter precipitation in our area will fall throughout the early morning hours. So looking at all the 4 sky cameras, once again, a dreary day, but the current temperature in Warner Robins, 51 degrees. Winds are coming from the east-northeast at 5 miles per hour. So we have that weather impact alert in place that will begin later tonight and will go through all of tomorrow and will linger until Monday morning. Now, the reason why we have that weather impact alert is for the potential of freezing rain and ice. It looks like all of these impacts would be for our most northern counties. However, we have another twist towards this forecast. It is the addition of the risk of strong storms, especially tomorrow for places south of I-16. So once again, what's the weather impact? Any ice accumulations for places north of Macon that could cause hazardous and slippery road conditions. And we could also see scattered to isolated power outages. The highest chances for any power outages would be our most northern counties of our viewing area, such as Hancock, Putnam, and Jasper County. And then for places south of Macon, you're not going to experience any winter weather, especially tonight or tomorrow morning. But what you are going to deal with, especially tomorrow afternoon, would be the possibility of strong storms that does have the potential of turning severe. Now, here's a look at the temperatures all across our area. Seeing mostly 50s for our viewing area, and we have upper 40s in Monticello, Eatonton, Forsyth, and Thomaston. Now, looking at the national view of temperatures, we have cold Arctic air towards the north. Wichita seeing temperatures around 3 degrees. Same thing in Kansas City, St. Louis 7 degrees, Amarillo 5 degrees, San Angelo, Texas 16 degrees, and 21 degrees in Dallas. So this is one of the reasons why we'll have the winter storm not only impactful for Georgia, but for most of this country, because we have that cold Canadian air sagging all the way towards south of San Angelo and Dallas, impacting places with really very cold air. And we're also seeing colder air towards Jackson, Houston in the lower 40s, upper 30s in Jackson, and towards the north in Charlotte into the lower 30s. So eventually all this cold air is going to meet moisture from the south, from the Gulf, and that will interact, bringing in the potential for very impactful winter weather all across the United States. Here's a look at our wind gusts. Now, we're seeing gusts of up to 16 miles per hour in Thomaston, 9 miles per hour in Eastman, but we're expecting the winds to pick up, especially by the evening and late night. We should see gusts of up to 25 to 15 miles per hour. Here's what I'm talking about in terms of the moisture. I showed you the cold air in place all across the country, but we need moisture for any wintry precipitation to begin. So we're seeing winds coming in from the south, pumping in that Gulf moisture, and we're seeing light shades of green towards the panhandle and the southern end of Alabama. Now, typically, this isn't bad, especially if you compare it towards the summertime where we have really bad muggy air. However, this is a lot if you compare this to the months of January, December, and February, where the wintertime we typically experience the driest air out of any time in this season. So with that moisture in place, it's going to interact with that cold Arctic air, causing an expansion in terms of a storm all across our country. And this is the reason why many people are categorizing the storm as historic. Now, thankfully for us, it's not going to be historic, but we could see impacts from this winter storm. And then we're going to have, once again, another chance of thunderstorms tomorrow afternoon. Today it's going to be breezy, a light shower or two throughout the rest of the afternoon and evening. Afternoon highs will be into the lower 50s. Here's a look at the satellite and radar. We are dry at the moment with mostly cloudy conditions. Going up towards the north, we're already seeing signs of wintry mix and freezing rain, especially up towards the North Georgia mountains. Same thing is true towards the northwestern quarter of Georgia near Rome and Dalton, seeing isolated pockets of wintry mix. But it looks like the bulk of the wintry mix and freezing rain at the current moment is right now over Tennessee, the northern end of Alabama, northern end of Mississippi, and for the northern parts of Louisiana. The more south we go in Mississippi and Louisiana, seeing more of a heavy rain for those areas, especially just towards the west of New Orleans. Now, expanding the view even more, we even have more wintry impacts occurring right now, especially in central Texas. So Dallas experiencing wintry mix. Same thing for the western corner of Texas, around the San Angelo area, where temperatures are within the teens at the current moment. And we just saw that a couple of graphics ago. So seeing that large swath of wintry mix not only affecting us here in the southeast, but for the majority of the eastern half of the country. And just to show you how much this storm is impacting places in our country, we can see impacts starting around El Paso. El Paso seeing wintry mix and rain. So that's as west the impacts begin. And then if we go all the way towards the east, seeing some impacts towards the eastern seaboard. So this is around 1,500 miles of impacts if we compare it from the western point of the storm to the eastern point of the storm. And then going from the most southern point of the storm, so central Louisiana and around the Arklatex area, going up towards the north, all the way towards Kansas City and Illinois, where we see that white swath right here. This is not clouds. These are snow that is currently happening, seeing around 600 miles of impacts from south to north. So this is a behemoth of a winter storm that's currently going on right now. And we can also see that with the bulk of the winter storm alerts issued by many different National Weather Service offices across the country. You can see the majority of the Great Plains, majority of the South, and the Midwest, including the Northeast, are within a winter storm warning. So most of Texas is within a winter storm warning, seeing areas such as Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, the southern end of Illinois, Kentucky, places within the Midwest, Ohio, Indiana, Pennsylvania, where I went to school, are expecting accumulations of snow from 12 to even 18 inches of snow in some spots, New York, and even as north of Maine. Now, for our neck of the woods, for Georgia, we're expecting mainly ice, and we can see that the North Georgia mountains are within a ice storm warning. So the majority, not only for the North Georgia mountains, but the majority of North Georgia are having the high certainty of seeing ice accumulations ranging from 1/4 of an inch to even an inch of ice. And then in our area, so central Georgia, most of our northern counties are within a winter weather advisory, meaning that we could have the potential of seeing 1/4 of an inch of ice. However, that confidence is higher for places farther towards the north, such as Jasper, Putnam, and Hancock County. So specifically, the places within the winter storm or winter weather advisory in north central Georgia, once again going over that, Washington County, Baldwin County, Jones County, Monroe County, and then the confidence is higher for higher ice accumulations farther towards the north, going over Jasper, Putnam, and Hancock County. Now, the reason why we're going to experience wintry mix and freezing rain rather than snow, just like last Sunday, has to do with the warmer air towards the higher levels of the atmosphere. So for snow to form, every single part of the atmosphere has to be below freezing, but you could have snow occur even if the surface is a little bit above freezing. We experienced that on Sunday, where we had temperatures around the surface around 33, 34, and even 35 degrees, and we still had snow across much of central Georgia. With wintry mix and with freezing rain, quite the opposite. For the later portions of tonight and for tomorrow morning, what's going to happen is that we're going to be cold around the surface, but the upper layers of the atmosphere is going to be warmer than freezing. So what does that mean? So once the precipitation falls from the clouds, it's going to fall as normal rain, but as it travels down towards the surface, it's going to encounter that layer that is below freezing, and that's when we'll experience that wintry precipitation, and that's where it should begin later this morning. So I'll show you the temperature graphic showing you the importance of why we have to be below freezing and how that's going to influence our forecast in terms of the overall accumulations towards our area. Here's a look at the future view. So over the next couple of hours, could see a stray sprinkle or so. By the late night, here is where we could potentially see wintry mix and freezing rain for the most northern tips of Hancock County. So this is right around 10 to 11 o'clock. Then this swath of freezing rain and wintry mix will start to expand farther south, so into areas such as Jones County, Baldwin County. This is around 2 o'clock in the morning, and then it will expand for the majority of places north of I-16. Once we get into 7 to 8 o'clock, temperatures are going to be above freezing, meaning that all that wintry precipitation is eventually going to dissipate, and we're going to start to dry out for a brief period. Now, this is where things get interesting, because then once we get into the afternoon, we're going to have to encounter the chance of a line of potentially strong storms, very typical of what we see during the springtime. So we can see that line coming in around 2 to 3 o'clock for our most western counties, cruising into areas such as Macon, Warner Robins around 3 to 4 o'clock, eventually getting into our eastern counties by the late afternoon and early evening by 5 o'clock. And then once we get into the evening hours, we should deal with residual rainfall that'll be light in nature. Then we'll get into the late night. That's when this line will eventually meander towards the east and we will be dry. By Monday mid-morning, we'll start to see clouds start to clear on up. This is around the window where temperatures will be below freezing once again, which is important towards the weather impact alert, because around this time we'll have that potential window where all the stuff that falls the day before and even the night before on Saturday night could refreeze, as we're expecting temperatures to be below freezing. Now, this is expected to be a short window of refreezing. Then we get into the late morning, we're going to be clear, and then we'll have temperatures above freezing. Pair that with the sunshine, we should eventually enter a time period where things should start to melt. Tuesday also looks mostly clear, and mostly the first half of the work week is going to be mostly clear, but it's also going to be very cold. So I'll go over that later in the stream. This is another model that we use. This is the high resolution model, another good short range model that we use for forecasting. And it's not really showing much ice accumulations for our area, only showing our most northern tips such as Jasper, Hancock, and Putnam County receiving any wintry mix and freezing rain. And this also has this lasting until 9 to 10 o'clock before dissipating further north. But it still is confident towards that line of rain and storms moving into our area by the afternoon. Timing similar to the other model, the graph model, getting into our western counties by the early afternoon, 2 to 3 o'clock, cruising into Macon, Warner Robins by 4, and then eventually getting into our eastern counties by the late afternoon, early evening, providing residual rainfall for much of the evening hours as well, then clearing up by Monday morning. So here's a look at the graphic that shows the onset of the impact. So when we will begin to see any impacts from this winter storm. This was made by Alex Pry earlier today, and it shows that the impact should begin for the northwestern corner of Georgia right around 7 to 12 o'clock earlier today. And we're seeing that on the radar. We're seeing the isolated pockets of freezing rain. And then for places farther south, as that storm gets closer, that's when we should begin to see impacts for places within the areas such as Athens, Gainesville, Atlanta from 12 to 8 o'clock. And then after 8 o'clock, that's when central Georgia, so the northern half of central Georgia, will begin to see any potential for a wintry mix and freezing rain. But based off what we have on the different models, it looks like it'll be either on the late night or morning when we encounter below freezing temperatures, which will allow wintry precipitation to fall. Now, of course, here's an inside look at the temperatures, looking at our Futureview temperature graphic, and it shows once we get into the early morning, that's when temperatures will then begin to fall to around or below freezing, so making around 34 to 35 degrees. This graphic actually shows a little bit above freezing, which would be very helpful towards our ice accumulations, because if, once again, you need temperatures to be below freezing for wintry mix and freezing rain to occur. So if temperatures are not around freezing, especially for Macon, the chances for wintry mix is extremely low, but we still have that chance for our most northern parts of our viewing area. So around the early morning to mid-morning, that's when we can see below freezing temperatures for our northern counties. Then we get into the afternoon. This is where things get very interesting, seeing warmer temperatures for places south of I-16. So could potentially see 70s for our places such as Chris County, Dooley County, and Wilcox County ahead of the line of rain and storms. And this will be present throughout the afternoon. Once the rain and storms move on in, that's when we'll see the potential for cooling temperatures throughout the evening hours as the rain will begin to cool our atmosphere. Then in the morning, temperatures will then begin to cool on down. This is where we are emphasizing the potential for refreezing. Monday around 7 o'clock, seeing temperatures around the upper 20s in Macon, which would allow any of the puddles, any of the rain from the day before to refreeze. But this is a very short window, because once we get into 10 o'clock, temperatures should warm back to above freezing, allowing for melting to occur. So it looks like the impacts are not going to be as great for Monday morning, but we still have that slight potential for some slippery roads on Monday morning for a brief moment. Now, part of the reason why we're going to experience that warm up, especially for places south of I-16, is because we're expecting a wedge to happen, which will be very influential to the forecast. So what is the wedge? It's a high pressure system towards the northeast, pulling colder air down towards the south, towards the North Georgia mountains, and then moisture from the Gulf will then drive that colder air back towards the north. So it causes a little bit of a battleground for central Georgia, in which we see colder air towards north central Georgia for places north of Macon, and warmer temperatures down towards the south, causing a huge temperature difference. This is what I mean by a battleground of different temperatures, causing that potential for strong storms, especially on Sunday afternoon. Here's a look of a colorful map by the National Weather Service showing the different levels of impacts that we're expecting for the Peach State. We're expecting extreme impacts for the northeastern corner of Georgia, especially the North Georgia mountains. The more south you go, you see higher impacts, especially for Athens, Madison, Atlanta, Rome, and Dalton, the northwestern corner of Georgia. Then the more south you go, you'll downgrade to a moderate risk for impacts. This is where we start getting into the north central Georgian counties. And then for areas such as Macon, the northern part of Twiggs County, the southern end of Monroe County, that's when we're expecting a low severity for impact. So what does this mean? Minor ice accumulations are expected for places such as Macon and Forsyth, and for Twiggs County, even parts of Wilkinson County. The more north you go, you have higher chances of impacts, such as seeing accumulations closer to 1/4 of an inch of ice and wind gusts of up to 20 to 30 miles per hour. Then the more north you go, you'll see the potential for 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch. Now, this is outlined within the northern tips of Jasper, Putnam, and Hancock County, which are consistently seeing the potential for ice accumulations in all of our models that we have. And then once we get into the North Georgia mountains, where they're highlighted in an extreme risk for impacts, that's where they'll have catastrophic effects from the accumulations from 1/2 an inch to 1 inch of ice, where it could lead to widespread power outages that could be long lasting. Now, this matches up with the forecasted ice totals that we have made yesterday. So if you live south of Macon, it should be mainly rain for y'all. Maybe an isolated pocket of wintry mix, but we're not expecting any ice accumulations, thankfully. The main thing you have to be aware of for tomorrow would be the risk for storms, and I'll show you that coming up. Areas north of Macon could see a trace amount of ice to even 1/4 of an inch of ice, but those chances are higher the more north you live, especially if you live in the northern end of Jones County, Baldwin County. And then once you get into Jasper, Hancock, and Putnam County, the more north you live, that's where certainty is higher that you'll see 1/4 of an inch to even 1/2 of an inch of ice, which would increase the chances for power outages. So what does the different ice accumulation predictions means? So if you see 1/10 of an inch of ice, could see some slick spots, especially on the sidewalks and some roads. You'll just have to be cautious driving, but it wouldn't make traveling or driving impossible. Then you get into 1/4 of an inch. That means problematic impacts, meaning that it'll be dangerous for bridges and it'll be very tough to stop on the roads. Now, it's not going to be hard to start driving, but it's going to be hard to stop, especially using your brakes. And then trees and power lines will begin to fail at this stage. Then we get to 1/2 an inch of ice, and that's where it'll be crippling. You can see widespread tree and power line damages. Roads will be impossible to travel on, and the power outages could last for days. Now, I've been mentioning that the risk for wintry weather will be confined for places north of Macon, but if you live south of Macon, you'll still have to deal with the chance of strong storms tomorrow afternoon due to the potential of a warm-up in the afternoon caused by the wedge. So as of right now, most of our eastern half of our viewing area, so the eastern half of central Georgia, is within a level 1 out of 5 risk for severe weather, for the potential for a strong storm or two that could cause some gusty winds. And we also cannot rule out the potential of a brief tornado. We have the ingredients in place of a brief tornado that could occur, but the chances are still relatively low. And then we have a level 2 out of 5 risk that goes over some parts of our southwestern counties, such as Chris County. Now, for reference, we haven't seen a level 2 out of 5 risk for severe weather ever since the end of last May. So just to go over that, it means that the higher chances of severe weather will be for our southeastern quadrant of our viewing area in central Georgia. Now here's another look of a graphic that we have. This shows the tornado potential, and it shows the tornado potential being confined for places south of I-16 once again, where the ingredients such as shear and instability would be in place. And also this would go over our southeastern counties as well, as that line of rain and storms continues to move through our area throughout the afternoon and early evening. So the tornado chance is present for tomorrow afternoon, and it's been a while since we had a tornado chance like this in a long time. We also have a cold weather advisory. Now this may be a little confusing because this has nothing to do with any of the potential of wintry impacts for later tonight and tomorrow morning. This is for Monday morning. It has nothing to do with wintry mix or ice. It has everything to do with temperatures. So once we get into Monday morning, temperatures are going to be into the upper 20s and lower 30s for a brief period. However, with winds gusting at around 20 miles per hour, could have the potential for wind chills around 0 to 15 degrees. Now, I'm not expecting any 0-degree wind chill values in north central Georgia. However, I think it's more realistic that we'll have wind chill values around the mid to upper teens, especially for the northwestern half of central Georgia that are outlined within that cold weather advisory. Now, going more in depth at the forecast for wind chills, of course, tomorrow morning we're going to have wind chills into the mid-20s, but we don't have a cold weather advisory for that time. But once we get into Monday morning, especially for northwest central Georgia, could see 17-degree wind chill values in Macon, and even colder values towards the northwest that are outlined in that cold weather advisory. However, I'm expecting even colder stuff for Tuesday morning, and this is where I expect another cold weather advisory for our area for Tuesday morning. Check this out. We're forecasting 12 degrees in Macon and even colder stuff up towards the north, where we could get into the teens or even less colder than the teens, so probably in the single digits. So it's going to be an extremely cold start to the work week, even after the wintry weather chances that will begin later tonight. So here are the main takeaways for the forecast. So most of today is going to look good, chilly, gloomy, few stray showers. Once we get into tonight, that's when the onset of wintry weather could occur, especially in the late night and for early tomorrow morning. Now, the risk for wintry mix and ice is going to be confined for places north of Macon. The chances are going to be higher the more north you live. And then we're going to have a quick warm up for places south of I-16. This could lead to a severe thunderstorm chance, especially in the areas outlined in the level 1 and even the level 2 out of 5 risk for severe weather. That's going to occur throughout the afternoon and throughout the evening. So here's a look at the weather impact alert. So this is going to start later tonight. We're expecting any of the wintry impacts to begin by the late night, by 10, 11, midnight. And if it doesn't happen by then, they'll be from the early morning. It all depends on when the temperatures are going to be around or below freezing. Once we reach that threshold, that's when the wintry weather should begin for our most northern counties. But for places south of Macon, temperatures are not going to go around or below freezing. So you should be good. I doubt that you will see any ice accumulations or any winter weather, but you will have the chance of strong storms tomorrow afternoon, as we'll expect temperatures to warm up in the 60s and 70s, causing the instability to increase, which is one of the main things needed for storms to fire up. And we know we'll have that moisture in place. So we'll have both of the ingredients needed for strong storms. So the need to stay up to date. If you live north of I-16, then stay up to date, of course, in the next coming hours for winter weather impacts. If you live south of I-16, stay up to date for any changes towards our severe weather risk. And we're going to be tracking not only the winter weather, but the severe weather risk all throughout tomorrow as well. Now, if you are within the areas with a moderate to high risk for winter weather impacts, it's best to avoid the roads, especially tomorrow, as you could see ice accumulations that could make driving hazardous. And it might be best to postpone any outdoor plans. And if you live south of I-16, it looks like morning plans are good to go. But then once we get into the afternoon, that's when the line of rain and storms could hinder anything that you have planned throughout that time. Here's a look at the 7-day forecast. All of tomorrow is within the weather impact alert. Then we'll have the potential for refreezing, especially in Monday morning, where we'll have temperatures into the upper 20s, giving us a short window of potential refreezing, causing any of the rain or precipitation that fell the day before to refreeze once again. So it could cause some hazardous road conditions for a certain amount of time in the late morning. Expecting most of everything to melt by Monday afternoon. So that's why our weather impact alert ends by the afternoon. Still going to be very cold with afternoon highs into the mid 40s, and much of next week is going to be extremely cold as well. Morning lows Tuesday morning should be into the mid to upper teens, but feels like temperatures could be even lower to that. So places in north central Georgia could be within the single digits for feels like temperatures on Tuesday morning. Getting into Wednesday, still cold but dry and sunny. Same thing for Thursday, and cloud cover will start to increase by the end of the next week, especially by Friday and for next Saturday.
Thanks, David. Scan the QR code on your screen to watch the radar 24/7 as winter weather moves into central Georgia. Stay with us on 13W MAZ Plus all day for more storm updates.